Well, welcome. Thank you for joining in this here in the United States this 4th of July weekend week. A lot of people take it off, but we really appreciate you sticking with us. So I'd like to introduce the panel with us today. Besides myself, I also have John Strickland, the co-chair. He's not on showing here, but he's very present. Also, Vishal Porwell, he's with AWP and Lean Research with the Construction Industry Institute. And then Mr. Sean Greystone, Director of Lean Coach over at Fluor, deep history and Lean going way back to the inception. So we're really fortunate to have Vishal and Sean on with us here to lead us through what we hope to be very interesting applications and how we start looking at Lean applications in AWP and also vice versa. So there's also questions. If you have any questions that come up, please go ahead and enter them into the question and answer control panel there, and we'll be sure to pick them up. All right, we've got a lot to cover. We're going to be talking a lot about, we're going to do a little bit of a poll, so your input would be very much welcome. We're going to talk a little about the challenges with production control and construction, about advanced work packaging, workface planning, and the last planner system. The last planner system and how and workface planning, how they work better together. Application of the last planner system in AWP environment, right? That's a lot of opportunity there for sure. And flow. There's a lot of things that we can now start looking at between how workplace planning and the last planner system can actually support a better flow program. Challenges and mitigations, of course, that they're always there, and the importance of sound data-driven decisions. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So we have a lot to cover. But first, let's get into the polls. So Vishal is going to lead us through the polls. First one being, how familiar are you with advanced work packaging?
We have the results coming in. All right. So it's 17% not familiar, 27% slightly familiar, 19% moderately familiar, 21% very familiar, and 17% extremely familiar.
Pretty well spread out. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Second one.
Yeah, just about last planner.
All right. So the results are 33% not at all familiar, 22% slightly familiar, 20% moderately familiar, 14% very familiar, and 12% extremely familiar.
All right. Nice spread.
And here's the next one. Who thinks LPS and AWP can work together? Closing now. So we have 2% strongly disagree, 0% disagree, 41% neither agree or disagree, 27% agree, 29% strongly agree.
All right.
And the last one. Are you currently working on leveraging last plan system in an AWP environment? closing the poll now. So we have 63% not at all, 14% rarely, 14% sometimes, 2% often, 8% always.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. This is something that we want to really encourage the use of the last planner system, and understanding how we apply it and when to apply it, right, is always the trick here. But I think you can go. You're looking at my screen again. You know, challenge with production control and construction, because both AWP and Lean's last planner systems are production control systems, in a little different approach, but that's exactly what they are. So with currently, and those of you in the AWP world, you know, you track direct work rates, and that typically hovers around 37%. You know, well published, and same thing with the lack of commitments and expectations. The average, and this is the Lean side, the average production plan reliability, or PPC, you know, is around 54%, which means every day we do about half of what we say we're going to go do, and that creates this ripple effect downstream. And then suboptimal work in process and cycle and flow times. So that is more of the operation science side of it, and we study it. We can see that work in process WIP, which is if it's large, you know, it doesn't contribute to the efficiency of our projects. And again, cycle and flow times are just how synchronous are we with the work, how tight is the work moving on our projects. So lots of opportunity, and I think most of us on you know, in this industry knows there's a lot of room for improvements, and these are the things that we can start measuring. So I'm going to talk a little bit, you know, about advanced work packaging. I think we have a very mixed crowd here. So from an advanced work packaging perspective, you know, we look at you can see interactive planning and project setup and path to construction is the POC, and CWPs and EDPs, which are construction work packages, engineering work packages. So the whole concept here is really, how do we break down the job into understandable chunks of work, and how can we relate all the information and constraints to that discrete package, so we can move to the final stage, which is work-based planning, which is installation work packages and system work packages, which start up leading into commissioning and startup. So how does this whole framework that takes us from basically a concept all the way through to how work is actually done in the field, you know, so the timings of things and development of the packages and the constraints of those packages, engineering constraints, material constraints, all these things are intentionally identified and removed and released. So work downstream is always as constraint free as possible, right? And how we organize that and optimize that, of course, is key. And you can see in the middle, this is called the famous surfboard, but below is front end planning, detailed engineering. It's going to take us all the way through commissioning and startup. So constraint management, and now what's becoming more important is all the information management. The data is becoming so rich, we can leverage it in much different ways. So from an overview, you know, that's kind of the big picture of advanced work packaging. I'm sure I'm leaving a lot out on that, but hopefully you guys are somewhat familiar. Now, what we do not know, and I'm going to hand this over to Sean here, is talk a little bit about the last planner system and some of the parallels that we look at.
And I noticed it was a nice distribution actually for knowledge on this, but if I remember right, it was about half. So the last planner system, which has been developed over the last 35 years or so, is you'll note at the bottom that this current diagram is based on the most current 2020 benchmark by professors Ballard and Tomlin. We often call it the collaborative system of project planning and control. The basis for the last planner system itself in that collaborative environment are what they call the 5 connected conversations that take place, because the collaboration is enhanced and stressed very seriously with a lot of focus on the handoffs as we move through the process, planning and control elements of the execution, from planning and execution of a cycle. What's left off of here and what developed out of the latest 2021 benchmark is there is the go, no-go pass at the top, which is right above milestone planning, and it doesn't have to do so much with process planning and control, which is and the integration of advanced work packaging, because it's really an owner's task. pre-project, we're going to focus on these 5 connected conversations. And again, if there are questions relative to this, we have a lot to deliver. So I'm just going to give you that 30,000 foot overview, and we'll get into it at a deeper level as well.
Yeah, and what we're also going to be looking at is the practice of each. There's a lot of similarities, right? There's the milestone level, which we can look at our CWAs and CWPs, construction work areas, construction work packages, engineering work packages, all have milestones attached to it. Phase planning, when things happen in big chunks. Look ahead planning, there's a familiarity with that. And of course, weekly work planning. How are they a little different? I think we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But one thing I do want to emphasize on the left side is the should, can, will, did, do, or did focus, right? So, hey, what should we do? What can we do? What will we do? And what did we do, right? And then how do we learn from that and feed it back in?
And that granularity, right? The closer and closer we get to the actual execution of the work. So the master plan is at the very beginning of the project and could cover the span of an entire P6 schedule from inception to turnover. Again, it's shoulds, right? We should be able to do this as we get more and more progressive. And when we talk about the differences between AWP and last planner system, for example, what we call the look ahead planning in last planner system is usually a 6 to 8 week process. Oftentimes in AWP, it's a 3 to 4 week look ahead process. But again, as we get down in granularity, it increases reliability as we get the commitments and the conversations going. Also, Fernando, real quickly, I want to point out this chart does not cover one of the other critical elements relative to both systems, which is constraint management, and we will get into, again, as Fernando said, AWP and LPS both have rigorous constraint management protocols.
All right. Okay, so those of you that are familiar with advanced work packaging, right? Here's the typical project lifecycle timeline, and if you're familiar with the different FEL 1, 2s, and detailed engineering all the way to commissioning and startup, right? This is representative of that line. And this is a typical, in fact, if you go to RT 390, the research team 390 report from CII, you'll find this graph, right? It tells you, okay, you're going to have a path of construction event. You're going to start breaking things down, right? Develop your CWPs and AWPs and contracting strategies and information, everything that would be required to start releasing. I don't want to say constraint-free, but nearly constraint-free at the level that they can control. You can control at the engineering and procurement level with the high-level construction into a release to the field, and then of course a lot of detailed engineering starts happening and the construction. So this is the typical life cycle, and I'm not going to go into the detail of that. But what I wanted to reflect is if we take all the detail out, right? And we just look at where should we be applying last planner mentality, right, and opportunities. It really is throughout the entire project lifecycle. So during engineering, how do engineers actually get work done? Why aren't they using look ahead planning and looking at the constraints to get things done, the handoffs between engineering, so we don't do a lot of rework or negative iterations is what we call it. Obviously in construction, it makes sense. We look at our look aheads. Why can we not make that richer experience and make more commitments? And of course, another work front which has the opportunity to look at last planner systems is the whole commissioning and startup process, right? How do we get teams to align to the priorities of construction, of commissioning and startup, and plan their work around that, right? What is my customer demand, and then how can I align my weekly work planning activities to deliver that, right? So as we go through this, know that it's not just construction, because everybody wants to think of construction and a typical look aheads, but this has been successfully applied. I don't want to say this is a theory. This has been successfully applied, right, in the different phases of work. All right, so I'm going to hand this off to Vishal. He's going to take us through this diagram.
So let's dive into how last plan system and WorkFace planning fit into an AWP environment. When you are setting up last plan system in an AWP environment, it might look something like this. First off, last plan system brings the concepts of should, can, will, and did, while AWP uses things like path of construction, construction work area, construction work packages and installation work packages. In the diagram here, the blue box outlines what should be done, completed with milestones and handoffs laid out in a CWP release plan and milestone schedule. Before CWPs are finalized, the team ensures engineering and procurement hurdles are tackled upfront. Trade-specific IWPs are then planned out for 1 to 2 weeks. Moving to the green box, we focus on what we can do, typically starting 6 to 8 weeks before construction kicks off. Here, we are in the make-ready phase, setting up look-ahead schedules based on CWP priorities and the path of construction. It's about getting the right tasks lined up and ready to go. As we approach construction, the yellow box comes into play with commitment planning. A week before kickoff, frontline supervisors commit to completing tasks outlined in the weekly work plan. Daily hurdles keep everyone on track, addressing any issues that pop up. By week's end, we are evaluating progress with percentage plan complete, the famous PPC metrics and other variances. And we pinpoint any hiccups with reasons analysis, and there is a learning process that follows. Throughout this process, standardizing processes and managing constraints are key. The system balances pushing work forward while ensuring plans stay reliable and variances are minimal. This push and pull approach, highlighted by red and gray arrows here, keeps production humming up smoothly, improving efficiency every step of the way. If you want to go next.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So one thing I would emphasize is that you see these polls. So there's a lot of handoffs, and this really does promote. Don't get into the level of into high level detail early. Let's make sure that at whatever level we're at the construction work package level, make sure that those are ready, that we can hand them down when the installation work package development requires it. Right. When I'm within a certain amount of time from the actual execution of that work. So there is this timing that goes this, and there is a standard processes and constraint management you see in the blue box that helps us to have a program of how we manage constraints, and the standard processes helps us to rethink things that we've already done so many times. We don't want to rethink them, right? So let's also take advantage of the knowledge that our predecessors have already developed.
And also, if I may add to that, the collaborative element, one of the places where LPS, in my view, enhances AWP seriously is the integration of the collaborative loop that's illustrated from the light green box down to the yellow box. So the down arrow, the pulling of information, the feedback and the looping back up, which again, as Fernando so rightly pointed out, the development of the actual package contents is enhanced greatly by the input of the executors. And again, that doesn't go on in the early stages of the IWP, or actually the advanced work packaging process. And as a matter of fact, I've been playing with this with a couple of the people where I'm working, and there's a beautiful analogy that basically, if we're going by the P6 schedule, this type of at the level 3 schedule, it's still pretty much construction work packages being handled more on the design side. When we get to the level 4, we distribute to the performers, the contractors, and individual work packaging. But at level 5 is the opportunity for this feedback loop, highly important feedback loop that keeps us from having to do rework and gets the collaborative commitment of the ability. That's why it's the will do square in that, so that we have a higher degree of reliability when we go forward for execution.
Yeah, and just to emphasize that will do part, this committed weekly work plan, right? That's something that you don't really hear or see much in the industrial space. And it's a whole act of actually looking at the true plan, understanding what you can really do, committing to that work, right? And then trying to achieve that at the end of the day. We don't see a lot of that, right? In the lean world, everybody, that's just the way it is. That's the culture. We commit to work, and we know we're not going to hit 100%, but we study why we didn't do that. So as we go through this, you can hear that maybe several times, but let that sink in if you're in the AWP world. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Give it a shot.
So the key to successfully integrating last planner system and workface planning starts with valuing and respecting your team. When everyone is engaged and respected, it sets a stage for open collaboration and coordination, which are crucial for merging these two philosophies together, these two frameworks together. The path of construction framework plays a vital role here, facilitating detailed short-term planning. This groundwork not only enhances execution planning, but also ensures effective production control. Given the unpredictable nature of construction projects, real-time monitoring is essential. Teams must be ready to adjust plans and provide support for quick decisions. Managing production flow involves techniques like production shielding, constraint management, pull planning, and commitment planning. Daily huddles also play a pivotal role in this joint effort, keeping everyone informed and aligned on daily priorities. And of course, continuous improvement is at the heart of it all. By constantly refining the processes and learning from each project phase, teams can achieve greater efficiency and success.
Yeah, one thing I do want to emphasize is the engagement and respect for people. I think we don't fully understand all the times on our jobs what that really means, because everybody comes, in the lean circles, everybody, you hire people for 2 hours, but it comes with a brain. And if we are total command and control that, hey, I'm being hired to tell you guys what to do, and we don't listen to good ideas, no one's ever going to respond back or to provide any constructive feedback. They'll just go away frustrated. So keep that in mind, right? Commitment and respect for people, they go together. I want to hear your good ideas, because maybe we'll get a better way to do something.
And I should add that the earlier that those feedback loops are enabled, the less rework we have, the less we have to go back and go through an entire cycle again. Again, one of the goals here too is to eliminate rework.
Yeah.
And as Fernando alluded to, advanced work packaging and last planner system really emphasizes working together and respecting each other, which is the key to making everything run smoothly and reliably. In construction, like lean construction world, this idea of respecting people is at the heart of everything they do. AWP takes it even further with a strong focus on safety and teamwork. AWP emphasizes involving construction expertise from the very start, which is a significant shift from how things are usually done in traditional projects. Plus, Lean's commitment planning adds another layer by making sure everyone keeps their promises and respects each other's needs throughout the project. It's all about really collaborating closely to get things done right.
Yeah. And
if I may,
really want
to do that, Vishal, I'm sorry. I was just going to say the key to that's handoffs. Once again, we focus on the handoffs, whether either path or not, but the reliability is based on the fact that someone can deliver if their prerequisites are set and delivered as well. And so creating a flow chain where that communication cleanly and clearly passed on enhances exactly what Vishal is describing.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And I was just going to emphasize that first bullet point. You said both AWP and LPS, last planner system, promote, right? And yes, it promotes. The practice is what we need to really emphasize, because hey, I'm sure everybody's done good jobs with AWP and not so good jobs, and it's all about how it was implemented, right? Or the how far back up, issues with engineering and procurement of material. Why weren't they part of the system to alleviate those problems? So it really is looking at the actual application and what these systems do promote, and actually understand that, and then make sure that your team is able to implement it properly. That is key. Otherwise, we get false starts and things like that. All right. Sorry about that, Vishal.
So next, we will briefly look at path of construction, which is really like a roadmap that kicks off the AWP process. It's where we lay out how everything will get built up step by step. Think of it as setting the stage for the whole project execution. We figure out the best order for different construction work areas and construction work packages. It's all about planning out the milestones and phases, so we know exactly how things will come together. You can go next.
Yeah.
Talking briefly about how path of construction lays the foundation for effective short-term planning, especially when it comes to last planner system utilization in advanced work packaging environment. In this setup, weekly work plans are adapting to daily changes are crucial. To achieve this, it's essential to shield production with high quality assignments during the weekly commitment planning phases. These assignments should be well defined, correctly sequenced, and perfectly sized for the task at hand. Detailed planning and decision making are key in short-term planning with the last planner system. Collaboration plays a vital role here, ensuring that all constraints, be they material, equipment, personnel, or space related, are identified and resolved promptly. Reliability is paramount when making commitments with last planner system and AWP projects. Flexibility is also critical, allowing teams to swiftly adjust plans to accommodate any unforeseen changes. Effective short-term interval planning thrives on rapid feedback and proactive problem solving, ensuring smooth operations and timely adjustments. In our upcoming slides on production shielding, we'll delve deeper into how these strategies are implemented to enhance project efficiency and adaptability. So production flow management is one of the core principles of last planner system and WorkFace planning working together. The term flow describes the movement of work effort through a production or decision-making system to create transitions from ideas to a useful physical asset. When we talk about flow in different contexts, we can mean decision flows, engineering flows, material flows, resource flows, work execution flows, and even the flow of completed work moving to the next step. Both last planner system and advanced work packaging are great tools for optimizing these flows and boosting throughput. If you want to dive deeper into this topic, there is an excellent white paper shown at the bottom of the page slide here on production flow management. It's available on CII website for free. You can download it, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, or if you don't have access to it, you can always email myself, Fernando at construct-x.com, or John at GPS at collaborativeflow.com. So you'll see that also. All right, it describes flow very well in the different aspects of flow.
Next, we talk about production shielding. So shielding the production is the strategy to handle uncertainties in production systems. It involves making high quality assignments. You will hear this phrase again and again, high quality assignments. But I think it will be, if you take one thing home today, this will be the thing I would recommend taking home, making high quality assignments to boost the reliability of commitment plans. The diagram here shows a production control strategy designed to enhance production plan reliability by tackling uncertainty through these high quality assignments. In the last planner system framework, shielding starts with an initial screening of scheduled activities. Next, resources are matched with opportunities to maximize production throughput. This process creates a buffer or backlog of sound assignments from which assignments are chosen for each planning period. A near-term commitment plan or weekly work plan is then produced from the backlog. These plans are checked for soundness, size, sequence before getting the green light for production. After resources are used and work is completed, the PPC is calculated and any reasons for failing to complete assignments are identified and addressed. Advanced work packaging helps in shielding production by enabling constraint management throughout the project lifecycle. It focuses on path of construction supported by all stakeholders, including engineering, procurement, and operations.
One of the subtleties, I think, if I may jump in here real quickly, that is in what Vishal just said, and one of the places where sometimes with the management of production shielding is missed is the very important idea of the fact that you can have PPC at 80–90% efficiency of the tasks that are assigned being completed. But the real question here, and the subtlety that's easily missed here, is it the right work? that is being passed through the flow line. And I only bring this up for thought, but to me that is one, and as he said, if you can take something away, this is probably one of the more important slides to take away. But again, let's not miss concept of making sure the right work is in the right place in the sequence to maximize the handoff efficiency so that the production flow is not stopped or checked at a later date down the line, if I'm being clear.
No, thank you, Sean. That is an important message. So how do we look at that from an AWP perspective? Right, so those of you in advanced work packaging knows that there's a timing where here T is the plan of start of any work, in this case, an installation work package. And this timeline, which starts 8 weeks before that level, and sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's 16, sometimes it varies, right, on the type of project. How much planning should you do, right? So the concept here is that at T-8, I'm going to get a construction work package. It was a big scope of work. It could be anywhere from 8,000 to 15,000 hours of work, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And then I'm going to start breaking those down, right, into discrete work packages, installation work packages, which helps define the work. But to me, that's one of the key principles of Lean, is defining the work that you're going to go do, and then sequencing that work. And so you end up with a scope and a sequence. And now you can look at those different pieces and parts and looking at assigning all those constraints, and those constraints being engineering, materials, equipment, the tools I need, any prerequisite IDPs that have to be completed, including those of other disciplines, because these are all discipline packages, right? And then I'm going to spend some time expediting and removing those constraints. And why do I need 8 weeks? Because that's about how long it takes to remove constraints. And then I'm going to issue that when I think there's no constraints, that's constraint free. I'm going to give that to the field to go execute, and they can start dropping into their look ahead. They can start staging their materials for that installation work package and bagging and tagging, and then get ready to do the work. So by the time they start work, all the field coordination constraints have been removed through the look ahead process. And I think in this case, this is where last planner should actually be applied in this phase, and probably sooner. So we can start the work, and then we can close out the work, and then we can capture things. So I'm going to let Sean talk a little bit about some of the Lean principles here. So I'll go ahead and do the first click.
Basically, there are a series of blocks that take place as the work passes down in advance, as Fernando said. And this is one of the differences in AWP versus last planner system itself, which is how many weeks in advance should some of this management take place. AWP, sometimes it's a little bit longer than it's looked at in the last planner system per se, but the red slashes on the board represent the gates, I guess the best word that we were using, to make sure that as the timeline to the execution of the work ticks down, that the constraint removal and any other issues that would be blocking the actual execution of the work we have checkpoints, so to speak. Again, at the long look ahead, T-8 weeks, we should absolutely be identifying and assigning the constraints. By the time we get to 4 weeks out, the feedback coming back from the field, which is part of the can-do look ahead, both constraint removal and joint scheduling of the work for security and handoffs is taking place. And this goes all the way down right to when we actually place the work. That's T-0. That's there.
So yeah, if I could add to that, Sean. So at T-8, this is when the construction work package is released to construction for development of installation work packages. So going back to Vishal's production shielding, why would we send a construction work package that is flawed or doesn't have all the drawings or engineering, or procurement has left out some key things, right? Because they weren't part of the planning process, right? We don't want that to go downstream and all of a sudden we start fragmenting work. So at that level, in an ADP framework, that's the CWP being released to construction so they can develop the IWPs. And as Sean was saying, but at T-4, that's the other handoff of an installation work package being made constraint free and handing it to to the frontline supervisors to drop in their look ahead so they can remove the field level constraints. And that last shield is, hey, you're going to go do a weekly work plan. I want to know that I can actually go execute that work in that weekly work plan, and so with all the field constraints, so I'm not out there and I'll show up and guess what? There's a massive amount of materials right where we're supposed to work, or a big crane sitting there, or whatever it is, right? We've already thought through that and proactively removed those constraints. So this is a CWP release to an IWP development release, and then an IWP release to construction in the field, and then of course the actual work release at work itself.
Yeah, at the red and orange level, as Fernando was talking about, that's still the should do. When we get to the yellow, we are actually at the 6-week look ahead planning phase, slightly in advance of that, which is the creation of we absolutely can do that. Everything in green is we will do that. And so to get to the certainty of the executioner being able to pick up the package and run with it and say with certainty, I am going to get this work done in the next week, in the next 5 to 7 working days, and have those commitments be met. All of these are necessary. And that highlight that Fernando just popped on the screen is the greatest opportunity for the constraint management and the reliable commitment planning starts at that 6-week look ahead. Again, there's some variation in the thinking of AWP. Some AWP thinking puts that out a few weeks ahead. But if you look at it from the last planner side, it's been measured and the reliability windows are at their maximum at 6 to 8 weeks out ahead of it. And then there's a brilliant line that will pop up here, I hope, Fernando, which came from John Strickland as we were talking about this. And I happen to think this is exactly right on the mark, which is that WorkFace planning makes the work ready for the workers, but the last planner system makes the workers ready for the work, because the two basic standard definitions of interruption of flow from the last planner system set of definitions is those interruptions in flow and delays in work are either from workers waiting for work or work waiting for workers. And again, in the establishment of flow, which John is absolutely brilliant about illustrating, I think that point is right on the money.
Yeah, and one thing you'll also notice is that line goes out to T-6, which is normally not in the last in a look-ahead planning window for industrial. It's usually everybody likes 3 and 4 week look-aheads, but yeah. What we've learned in Lean is that 6 weeks gives you a good chance of removing all the constraints that could be out there in the field, those last little minute RFIs that might come out, and I can start planning, to get those removed before the time I actually do the work. And 6 weeks seems to be that window to do that.
Thanks for remembering that emphasis, Fernando. I'm glad you captured that, because we talked about this at length when we were planning this out, and it's a critical point.
All right, let's go to back to commitment planning. What is this?
Commitment planning is the unique aspect of last planner system and can greatly enhance the current WorkFace planning process if done right. So at the end of each week, frontline supervisors roll up their sleeves and dive into commitment planning. They kick things off by identifying solid assignments and prioritizing them using the look-ahead schedule. Their on-the-ground knowledge and what's coming up next week. Then they figure out the manpower they expect to have on hand. Next, they create a weekly work plan bar chart, prioritizing the assignments. Each task is tailored to match the crew's capabilities, with all the steps and durations clearly laid out. The key here is to make sure the tasks are detailed enough to be marked as done by the end of the week. If there's work left but not enough manpower to handle it, those tasks go into the backlog. On the flip side, if there's more manpower than tasks, the supervisor reaches out for further instructions. Once the plan is set, it gets the supervisor's stamp of approval. From here, it's all about execution. Frontline supervision and foremen work closely to ensure the work is done safely and to high standards. Supervisors handle sequencing and sizing of assignments, making sure the plan is solid and well-defined. At the week's end, they measure the PPC and any variances. It's the supervisor's job to dig into why any planned work wasn't complete, working with foremen to prevent it from happening again. As Ballard and Howell famously said, Change starts with commitment planning. It helps uncover defects and deliver issues, forces work to halt if there's a problem, and requires flexible scheduling. Anything to add to it, Fernando and Sean?
No, I think that's good. It is this part of it that's really kind of I see missing in the industrial space for the most part. So I think it's worth looking into this a little bit intentionally by our audience on how I can really apply this. All right.
You know what, the one thing I pop in here, Ed, every once in a while is aligning on just what the commitment is one of the key stakes. And so when we measure why did we miss a commitment, not defining it well is probably the most important reason. So teaching the teams to make and keep reliable promises that are really well articulated, and take the time to explain exactly what it is you're promising to do and exactly what you're promising to use or what you need are a big part of the problem.
Yeah, and John, add to that, and making sure that the prerequisite to the performance of that task is made equally clear in the conversation. Because that's the last little piece of that, in my mind. That's the other hook where things get caught.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just getting someone to commit to meeting a date, which is a lot of times, once I hear yes, all I want to hear is a yes from you. You're gonna meet that date. I don't want to hear anything else. Well, this is making sure you hear everything else, so everyone really understands the commitment.
Yeah, because it's not just saying yes. It's not just saying yes. It's saying yes if. Yes if. And that's the subtle difference. That's the difference in the collaborative environment versus the straight path of,
In the last planner system, we welcome the ifs. I think historically in most traditional contracting, they suppress the ifs.
I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I'm thinking also just as important in understanding the commitment and handoff process is being able to say that you can't do something, right? Because there's a lot of other people that are looking for that handoff that might be impacted. And by being truthful in this process, hey, look, guys, I can't hit that date. That means that you others have to replan your work or push something out a little bit. Or if you move it forward, it opens it up. So everything that we can share, all the information we can share is vitally important if we're thinking about planning ahead, not just saying I'm going to hand this off because I promise and the world is perfect. Sometimes you just can't. You're informing people so they can, giving them the courtesy of replanning their work.
Right.
Yeah, there is no certainty in construction except for the fact that things will change, pretty much. And then how do we handle it agilely, as Vishal pointed out in one of the much earlier slides. So again, agile thinking, the ability to be extremely flexible, to experiment, and to use the best elements of multiple systems to figure out what is the cleanest and most reliable flow. Because here, what we're looking for is reliability. Being ahead of schedule is just as bad as being behind schedule. What do we want? We want to know as best as we can that what is committed to is met on a regular basis.
Okay. All right, thanks. So Vishal, let's go. We're running out of time, so as usual.
Yeah. So another quick, we talk about daily huddles, which is another important component of last plan system and WorkFace planning working together, where these are small stand-up meetings where teams that rely on each other come together and they share the commitments that they have completed or the commitments they will not be able to complete and the commitments that they need help with. So it's a daily stand-up meeting helping the reliable planning. If you want to go next. You can go next. So last plan system and WorkFace planning have a lot in common. When used together, they can really boost production control on construction projects. WorkFace planning focuses on creating and executing constraint-free IWPs. On the other hand, last plan system highlights the importance of collaborative pull planning and commitment planning. AWP also plays a role here by helping create quality assignments during the commitment planning process. By combining these practices, we can improve efficiency and outcome on our projects.
Excellent. Okay, so let's talk about mitigating and the challenges, because obviously, especially from the poll, not a whole lot of people have actually put these together, and some have. So, key, of course, is securing top management buy-in to go do this, right? Because you need support for this. It's going to be, it's not easy for everybody to just all of a sudden, yeah, you have a voice and you can you know, impact or influence the job, right? We need programs, training programs. We need to have a phased implementation plan. Don't go do all this at once. You know, let's look at how do we introduce these different processes and when and where. You know, maybe it's not going to happen in engineering, but it could happen on a job site, right? What is that change management strategy that's going to be important, right? That's what you know. We know that getting people to do this and getting organizations to step in requires a little bit of thought here. Contracting strategies, you know, if you're going to do this, you know, make sure the contracts are written the right way and are enforceable, so we can look at both the goals of advanced work packaging and the last planner system. They, you know, and you can actually even look at IPD and I2PD as part of this. Governance structures, right? You know, if it's a strong oversight, I am the owner and thou shalt, or versus, hey, we got to create this integrated governance structure, because you know I as one level can't dictate to everything, but how do we promote this collaboration through, you know, through creating these integrated governance structures? Invest in robust data management systems, right? The world is changing, that we need to stay up on top of this as much as we can, and data helps us manage all this. Leadership skills at all levels through targeted development programs. You know, we need people to stand up. We always talk about AWP champions, lean champions, right? And we need the managements at the different management levels and skill, you know, field levels to actually buy into this too. All right. The next thing is importance of sound and data-driven decisions, right? I know John said that earlier, and Vishal and Sean emphasized it. You know, near real-time production monitoring and control is essential. We need to know what's going on all the time, and that's why the weekly work planning and maintaining this these commitment reliability indices and planning and what is your work assignment. All that has to happen in real time. It can't be anything, or near real time, I shouldn't say nothing that's in real time, but so people can understand what they're going to go do and why they're going to go do it. Tracking lean last planner system and AWP KPIs and acting on them, you know, gives us a continuous improvement, which is a very lean concept, and it's an advanced work packaging in an industrial space as well, right? But there's a lot of different types of KPIs we look at. Plan percent complete on the lean side, commitment levels, tasks anticipated, tasks made ready, you know, frequency of planned failures, right? Those are things that we don't hear often in the industrial space. Work packaging, of course, and readiness and completion rates are things that we can do, right? So just to kind of wrap this up, you know, some golden nuggets. Last planner system and WorkFace planning have common origins grounded in short interval planning and production control practices. The last planner system can be leveraged in AWP environments by combining the structured approach of WorkFace planning and the production management processes of the last planner system. And by tracking the last planner system in AWP, performance metrics in near real time, data-driven decisions can be made in the rapidly changing production environments on construction sites, right? So the whole thing is, yes, if we look into it, they're very complementary to each other. Whether you're in a portfolio project, a giga project, there's always pockets where you need one or both of these things, depending on the project, right? If you're so anyway, they do work together. We're trying to emphasize that, and that's what all NextGen is about. This is like one of the basics of where NextGen thinking brings these two basic practices together. So with that, we'll go and start addressing some of the questions. It looks like there's a lot out there, John.
Well, I've got 4 that I found out there, and I've answered several of them. And while you're getting a chance to pull that screen up, I would just make the observation as we were getting into the blending AWP and last planner together, the biggest difference tends to be the culture in which the construction industry has formed. The last planner system is very much built on a team-based system, and it's based on distributed planning and control rather than centralized control. And the culture you get on these job sites, as I call it, it's the opposite of command, kind of the opposite of command and control or command and coerce, because it's not it's the mindset that you're engaging the people closest to the work who really understand what's going on, who can tell you what really is going to restrain your project if only you listen to them, was kind of the formation of the last planner system. And finding those restraints is also the essence of WorkFace planning. So there's a tremendous relation there. Fernando, can you read the questions?
Yeah, I can.
I've answered some of them as we went along, and I left the top one for you.
All right, can I see the top one? I have one here that what are some of the major constraint categories?
Yep.
Materials, drawings, crews, many construction materials, including commodities, have longer than 6-week lead times these days. Does this require or merit any modifications in the IDP generation timeline we just saw? So that's a great question. What we do in the AWP program, we didn't focus on the last planner system except for the construction side. On a normal path of construction and also in the milestone and phase planning of lean, right? These long lead items are identified, and of course we look at, yeah, hey, here's a major piece of equipment, and these things take 12 weeks to get, and how does that fit into my plan? So the more you do in your path of construction and you integrate with your procurement folks and your engineering folks and get those bill of materials done as early as possible, right? The rest of the team will start looking at what commodities do I need to those installation work packages. So does it change the structure of advanced work packaging? No, because on the front end side, because we're getting all that feedback and we're going to manage our constraints against that. Now, in the last planner system applied to engineering, now we're going to focus on what are you designing, when are you designing it, what information are you getting, and what deliverables do you have. In this case, say an EWP, an engineering work package. I want to deliver that when I'm supposed to deliver that according to my POC. My procurement system, same thing. My construction readiness, same thing, right? And that's the first release. So we can apply the last planner system at that level early on to address these commitments. Now, the other part that you asked about was the IDP generation timeline, and that does vary, right? Because if I'm on a more complex job and you know, I don't have a lot of reliability and the teams are new or what have you, even on the CWP, getting my materials organized and they're coming in at certain times, especially for remote, right? You can have what we showed there was an 8-week timeline, but often 12 weeks and often 16 weeks, right? And those IDP development and constraint removals take a little longer at times. So every project needs to evaluate that and make that determination. And if it's a problem, you can always adjust, right? But the whole idea is, what is it going to take to get constraint-free work, you know, done and release that downstream, so they have a much better chance of doing their work without disruption. So I think I've got everything on that.
I captured some of that, Fernando, and you might want to go through into formal and restraints, and I couldn't type as fast as you could talk. We got part of it.
Yeah, all right.
What you often say.
Okay, so we got one question. Do you recommend commitment planning done at IDP level or at a more detailed task level? Oh, okay, that's another good question. So the IWP level is really what you start, right? And IWP sometimes just there's a lot of earned value calculations and not really true work steps. But if we can identify in our installation work packages, and the foreman or general foreman can really do this well, is that they study what am I going to do first, second, third, fourth, fifth in this installation work package, helps them better coordinate the work. So yes, there is a little bit of effort and really not much, because when you get down to the installation work package, that's the beauty of from my perspective, work-based planning, is that we've defined the scope of work so well at a week or 2 weeks of work that a foreman and the work-based planner can easily come up with what they see as a logical sequence and hold points. And now that those little bits of information can be communicated to safety professionals, to quality professionals, and surveyors, and you know, all these people can now plan their work around that, because they'll end up with days on a plan. So that hopefully I've answered that one. Commitment planning is also where discipline interface and coordinate their activities to ensure others understand what each is doing. Yes, that's a very good statement. Because if you're not willing to make a commitment, and you're just trying to not think about it too hard, yeah, give me a couple of weeks and I'll get it done. That little give me a couple of weeks means that you're not going to be reliable. You could finish early, but no one's prepared to follow right behind you, or you could finish late and then I have to hold back my stuff. So knowing that you can't ever really complete your work within a day, or that you say, I'm just going to give myself a buffer to show up 2 days later or 3 days later when I ask you, are you done yet? Right. So that is the key there is, yes, commitment planning is a place where the truth has to come out. Right. And the beauty of it is that you have a collective team that all encourages each other and doesn't put blame on anybody. Right. So
that's more transparency there too, is that the way we used to in the earliest days, I remember Greg and Glenn describing this as you shine a very bright light on whatever or whomever is holding up the project. And so people don't have the hiding. And one of the points made in our discussions here, I'll remind here, is another big difference or distinction about this teamwork is the owner is a performer in this system, not just a spectator or a taskmaster. You know, so the owner has very often, there's a great saying that projects move at the speed of owner decisions. And so very often, some of the most important commitments that need to be made are decisions that we're asking the owner to make. And we need to ask those at the time to give them the fighting chance to do it. You know, so how you ask those decisions and you know, don't ask more than you need is pretty important to us.
And one of the other key points to that extension of what John's saying there too is in the last planner system, you actually are encouraged to say no if you can't make the commitment, which in a standard track is not really an allowable path. So, and part of that has to do with, Fernando made a reference to this sideways too. There's a wonderful saying in Lean, which is we don't assign blame, we reassign risk. And so the question is with transparency, we can figure out how to mitigate, how to work around, how to substitute one task, how to change the flow line so that the overall line isn't interrupted. But these are some fundamental changes in the approach of the mindset of the group that are encouraged under a Lean application implementation within advanced work packaging.
Yeah, saying no is sort of like the old Toyota thing of stopping. You pull the end-on cord and start the production line. Saying no is part of that, is saying no, the thing is broken. And one of the other thing is you know, yes doesn't mean much if no wasn't an option.
You got it.
So that's part of that culture thing you're going through again.
Yeah.
And that steps right away into also the continuous learning loop, which is why it's so critical. Because again, the goal here is how do we improve the next round, literally, right? So.
Fernando, I think we just hit the top of the hour. We have a few questions we didn't answer quite yet. Because I couldn't quite, once they started rolling in, I couldn't answer them quite that fast.
All right, I'll give a quick shot at this. Is it possible to have a recommendation on books on AWP? We will send them out. There's a lot of information in CII, of course, with all the research teams. And Vishal, I don't know if there's actually a formal publication, a book that actually was been published. That's not outside.
Our joint working group site would also be a great place to find a lot of stuff. Yeah,
we have papers, white papers that talk through the AWP and Lean. Not so much about the details of advanced work packaging, but there's RT 390 just came out that talks about the practice itself. So if you have access to that, you know, please take advantage of all if you're a member of CII. You know, if not, Vishal, I don't know if you could put a list together, that'd be good. We need to have an IDP or collaborative contracting culture for this to work, right? And for owners to, this combination is wonderful. You know, it's what John said. There's a culture, and you need requirements, of course, to do anything. But you know, you don't. We're just exploring the IFOA type integrated forms of agreements and the integrated project delivery processes, and it does take some paper to do that. Doesn't mean you have to. You can build this into requirements and do the parts that you need to do. Advanced work packaging has, you know, a set of guidelines and that you have to follow, and it is driven by the owners for one and the EPCs for the other, for the most part in the industrial space. But yeah, it's Collaborative contracting is the goal, I think, in many respects, because there's a whole group working on that right now. Yeah. I mean, in an owner build model, we use this mainly in Brazil. Yeah, I'm sure there is. That's good to know. And management role is also to challenge the frontline supervisors with aggressive target dates for them to figure out how to achieve it. Also to challenge some of the field to take on more in their weekly work plan than they think they can handle, to have a backlog. I would suggest that it's, yes, you'd like to have more, but if you think about this, if you could keep your teams at 80% capacity, the change will fill up the other 20%. So being overly aggressive, you want them to achieve goals is one thing, but trying to look at where you really want to go and plan towards that by driving in more efficiencies and all that is probably the right thing to do, right? Because it's a combination. You've got to set the goals, right? And the workface planners and the foreman and general foreman need to honestly tell you whether they can achieve them or not.
I've never worked on a project where the goals weren't plenty difficult. I mean, when we're looking at the milestones, I don't think I've ever sat on one where the team said, we've got way more time than we need to go do this. And we have way more money. So usually that challenge is already there. And if you intentionally overload the team, you are guaranteeing their failure. And so, but you don't know where it's going to be. So what you want to do is make sure you focus on those tasks where you make sure that they don't miss, because they mean the most to most people. Then have workable backlog, still a thing in my world. Have enough workable backlog. If they get that done, there's still plenty of work to go do. But guys love getting stuff done. I know, I love getting stuff done.
I like there's a comment here that you have a few natural sandbaggers, and that absolutely you do, and that's why these processes really require strong facilitation, because you kind of call them out. So so you're not putting enough on the plan. If that was the previous comment, is something.
And the other last planners will do that, by the way. If you sit in the last planner meeting, if somebody is sat, if the piper is sandbagging, the electrician is going to call him out. Usually the opposite way around.
Yeah. If I only plan one thing and get one thing done, I got 100%. So yes.
No, in a transparent environment, the peer pressure is what actually changes that entire paradigm. And again, if you create a condition where someone cannot say no with a valid reason, and then figure out a group manner in which to mitigate, you're actually going to obstruct the flow sooner or later, because people will stop being transparent.